My job. All right. So that is the topic for today, gender-based violence. And the statistics of gender-based violence, particularly within the South African context, are honestly horrific. There's no other way to put it. If you look at some statistics, more than 50% of women in the country have faced gender-based violence at least once in their lives. Um, there are other crazy statistics. I think nearly six women, I think six or maybe even more women die each day based on gender-based violence. And those and if you look at other statistics like the rape statistics as well, very scary. And those are only the reported statistics. According to, I think, Stats SA or some other statistics community, they said that all of the rape cases that are heard through South African courts and they're reported by police only accounts for at least 10% of all rape matters that actually happen. The other 90% go under the rug and no one talks about it, and women tend to suffer because of it. So gender-based violence is absolutely a problem in this country. And that is something that we should all have a part in combating. And that is something that social workers and also social auxiliary workers will come across at one point or another in their careers. All right. So in this session, we will be defining gender-based violence and identifying its forms. We will be we will be looking at the key drivers and the indicators of abuse. We'll be explaining the South African legislation that speaks to gender-based violence, and we'll be looking at how to provide a trauma-informed first-line support. So that happens is if somebody calls you at 2 o'clock in the morning, if a woman calls and says, you know what, my husband just beat me up, he's got a gun, he wants to shoot me, what do I do? And a lot of the time, social workers would be the first line of call, if not the police. And the question is, how do we deal with that? Basic safety planning will also be looked at, and then the referral pathways. So there are numerous stakeholders involved when it comes to issues of GBV. So we need to look at when do we refer matters to other professionals and how do we do that? All right, so first question that I have. Firstly, let's just look at the definition. So GBV is defined as harmful acts which are directed at an individual based on gender, power imbalance, or societal norms. All right, so gender-based violence is a specific form of violence which usually occurs against a member because of their gender, or if there is a power imbalance, or because of societal norms. Okay, that's why it very commonly happens between a man inflicting violence on a woman, for example. So whether it has its roots in gender or power imbalances, that is where you term it as gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is a violation of human rights and it is rooted in various aspects. We have unequal power, so this speaks to in a lot of patriarchal societies where a man is considered to be the head of the household, and the woman is meant to be submissive. That is just one example of how that power imbalance, that unequal power imbalance, can affect and can actually motivate, so to speak, gender-based violence. We also have discrimination. Discrimination can happen between men and women, but also on a sexuality sphere as well. So, for example, a queer person or a person on the LGBTQIA spectrum who faces discrimination and who faces a violent act based on that type of discrimination, that would also be classified as gender-based violence. We also have social norms, which is rooted very deeply in culture. And then we also just have control and dominance, okay, within the households. So my first question to you is, Let me start with Molefi. Molefi, can you explain to us what causes GBV? Why do you think GBV is such a problem in South Africa? Why is it so bad in this country?
Okay, thank you so very much, and good evening to the class.
Good
I
evening.
think one of the most important things that one have to look at in terms of gender-based violence is the overpowering of women or another gender, because these people who are dealing or doing this are ex to these other genders are trying to show how powerful they are, and sometimes it happens because they want to get things forcefully to those genders and so on. So basically, I would say people who are dealing with this are the ones who are trying to show that how powerful they are, and they don't care about other people's emotions and so on. Yes.
All right, thank you so much. That is a lovely answer. Shakir, what are your views? Why do you think South Africa is such a big problem with gender-based violence?
Well, if we covered a lot of it, but it's just uh different. It happens for different reasons. I like when I was checking up the topic, gender-based violence is not just physical violence. It could be mentally abusing a person, physically abusing a person, emotionally abusing, all of these things that fall under gender-based violence. So it's quite a vast thing as well. Why it happens in South Africa is because people don't report it, number one. So a woman will get hiding and she's just scared to report it, or she'll get hiding. She don't want to report it because she doesn't have anywhere else to go, and so on and so forth. So different reasons it happens in South Africa, and I'm glad that we are taking a stance against it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your answer. And I'm very glad that you mentioned there that in many of situations, these matters go unreported due to the fact that women cannot, they do not have anywhere to go. And that is a very stark reality that we have, particularly in South Africa, because generally what you have in the South African setup, in your more traditional households, you have the man who would be the breadwinner of the house, and he provides the food, he provides the house over your head, he cares for the children and all of that. And many women who get abused by these men, either emotionally or physically, they either they do not go to the police, they don't report it, they don't open protection orders, they do not seek for help because they literally have nowhere to go. And that is something that we as social workers would also need to consider and assist these people in working out a type of safety plan. But that is what we'll get to later. Thanks so much, Shakir. Let me move on to the next topic. So, as already mentioned, South
Can I
Africa.
can I just comment on one thing quickly?
Yes, please, Jackie.
So I think that the reason that South Africa is so particularly bad is because we actually have a culture of violence, and that's not uh, it's not being unlearned. Um, my adult daughter has now learned not to beat her children, right? Because
Yeah.
she's watched how we care for our. So my grandchildren are now not being beaten by her. But her entire community thinks she's mad and thinks she's spoiling the children and thinks she's, blah, 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 because she won't beat them. And the logic of if we show them that we solve things via violence, we then become violent. Like they don't understand this logic. So I think in other countries they've moved beyond the fact that we need violence to discipline, we need violence to control, we need violence to do all these things. I think it's a very deeply ingrained belief in our society that violence is how you manage things and violence is acceptable in many cases. And then we wonder why we have this problem. That's my opinion.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And now that you mentioned it, I'm not sure if any of you have sat in our ECD classes, our early childhood development classes, but every time when I get an opportunity, I'll always mention the fact that hitting a child has now become illegalized in South Africa. And numerous studies have shown that many children who grow up by being hit as kids, they end up learning that if I want something to be done a specific way, or if I need to discipline you, if you are doing something that I'm not happy with, um, in order to correct that, I'm going to hit you. And that starts from a very early age, when children get hit, and that leaks a lot into adulthood. And that is only just one facet. So thank you very much for that.
If I may
Elizabeth?
add something before you go on,
Yes, sure.
and I'm gonna just jump on what Jackie said. Uh, Majority of the cases that I've dealt with where the husband hits the wife, and I'm saying literally majority of the cases where the husbands hit the wife was because he saw his father hitting the mother.
Yes, absolutely. So there is also a generational aspect to it.
Yes.
So as you'll see, there are so many different sources of where GBV can come from. And essentially, if you boil all of that down, if you look at why was the father hitting the mother, all of those things, that boils it down to there either being a power imbalance or social norms. Yeah, those are the two main things. It's the power imbalance and the social norms. Thank you very much for that. Elizabeth, I saw I think your hand was up.
Uh, okay, no, I just wanted to say you are spot on with what you just said. The children tend to normalize, like they tend to model this very same behavior that they observed from the parents. And as we speak, we are dealing with we are doing what we call behavior modification because the damage has already been done. Now we are trying to correct the damage that has already been done.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you for giving me a heads up before what I said. Thank you so much. And yes, so there are lots of it all starts from an early age, and there's a lot of aspects that go into gender-based violence. All right. Femicide also goes side to side with gender-based violence. South Africa has 5 times the global average of femicides. And femicide is basically women being murdered by their partner. It's usually in a relationship. 90%, if not more than these cases, of women murders arise from it being from someone very close to them. And it will normally be a boyfriend or a husband or a partner, any ones of those. So we have 5 times the global average. And femicides also in South Africa are very extreme. We're a very violent country, like Jackie mentioned. We're just in the news, I think it was a few months back, where a pregnant woman was hanging from a tree. She was murdered and then hung from a tree by her partner. So it's very, very scary statistics that we have here in South Africa. Not only are women affected, children are also affected. LGBTQ plus persons are also affected, as well as persons with disabilities. So essentially, like we've said, GBV is a power dynamic, it's a play of power dynamics, and it's usually the vulnerable groups, the women, the children, the queer persons, as well as the disabled persons that are most impacted by it. All right. And as you already mentioned, many cases are unreported. And social workers play a very, very vital role in the early identification as well as in support, which is what we're going to get into. All right. Some other
Can
drivers
I
of
just say one more
GBV?
thing?
Yes, of course.
I just want to point out something as well, is it's not just that they're not reported. I mean, I've reported 3 cases of
Jackie, are you still with us? Jackie? I think we lost Jackie.
you
Shakir,
know,
can you
and
hear
if they don't
Jackie?
have
Oh, there we
support,
go.
that person, am I back?
Yes, you're back now. Sorry, you're gonna have to start right from the beginning. We didn't hear any of that.
Sorry. Oh, I'm
That's
gonna just,
I thought they took you out for reporting them.
fine. No, I think we've lost Jackie again. Jackie, let me give you 5 minutes. Please hold on to that thought
hello?
because we would love to hear your experiences. Jackie?
Hi, I'm back. Yes, I'm back.
Oh, okay, great. Yes, please.
Sorry, I switched to my data.
Okay.
Um, so what I was saying is, I think it's not just a case of it being unreported. I think even the cases that are reported, very few actually go to trial because, I know three cases that I've been involved in with sexual abuse that have not gone to trial because lack of evidence. He says, she says, and often the power dynamics are in the man's favor. And the way it was explained to me every time in the court is we have cases that have evidence that we're more likely to win. So we're going to put our resources behind those cases. And so a lot of cases, I think, do get reported and don't even get to trial. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Yes, and you do make a very valid point. There's the justice system has also let down a lot of victims when it comes to GBV. But it is good to note, though, that if you do lose a case in court, it is an appealable matter. It does get a bit costly, but there are a lot of pro bono attorneys and legal aid that can assist in that regard. So I think it also boils down to education and knowledge. People need to know what they can do, how they can find help, and the avenues that they can find help. And just from a legal perspective as well, I've also dealt with a lot of cases that seem straightforward GBV, um, but the partner, usually the man in the situation, the husband will defend the matter and oppose the matter, and he will just deny it. You would have pictures of abuse, of bruises on a woman's body, and he will just outrightly deny it. And you need to argue it in court. And arguing it in court is also another issue because you have to be in the same courtroom as the perpetrator. And you need to give testimony as a witness in front of that perpetrator. And a lot of my clients that I've assisted as well as a lawyer, they are the anxiety is through the roof when they get to court. They do not want to be in the same space as the perpetrator. But unfortunately, that's how the system, the court system is set up. And that's why many of them just look at dropping the cases as well. All right, thanks so much for that, Jackie. So the drivers of GBV, we've already looked at some common contributors. We've already touched on childhood exposure to violence. We've also looked at cultural beliefs that normalize control and intergenerational trauma. We've touched on those as well. There's also toxic masculinity and patriarchal norms. Then we have poverty and financial dependency. Um, Usually where the one spouse is financially dependent on the other, and then we also have substance abuse. All right, forms of GBV, gender-based violence is not only physical. Physical is the only one aspect of gender-based violence, and that is the aspect that we can see physically, such as hitting, slapping, or choking. Okay. We also have emotional and physical abuse. So that's as threats, humiliation, and isolation. Can also be manipulation as well. Sexual abuse, we have rape, we have coercion, where you're coerced to engage in sexual conduct, and we also have exploitation. Financial abuse as well, where you restrict a woman's access to money or access to work. So you do not give her a bank card. You do not allow her to find a job and be employed and part of the system. She just needs to stay at home and look after the kids. And if that is what she does not want to do, that would also be a type of financial abuse, as you're depriving her of financial financial freedom, so to speak. We also have digital abuse, stalking on social media, and in person, threatening them on social media, creating accounts, ghost accounts, and harassing people and threatening women on social media. That is also considered as digital abuse. And then we also have spiritual abuse, which is using religion to control um, or to shame a person. All right, that is spiritual abuse. An example of digital abuse is quite interesting. If you're following the case of Nandipa and the Nandipa and her boyfriend who escaped prison from Bloemfontein. Sorry, I forgot his name now. Perhaps someone can help me there with his name. But if you watch the
Thabo
doc,
Bester.
there we go, Thabo Bester, yes. If you follow Thabo Bester's story and you look at the documentaries regarding Thabo Bester, and how he treats Nandipa as well, and how she was being handled throughout this entire thing, which I'm not saying she was innocent in what she did, but if we look at their relationship as well, you can already easily point out emotional abuse, financial abuse, digital abuse, and as well as sexual abuse as well. And that is just one example. All right. That's just a big common example that everybody knows about. All right, the cycle of abuse. Now, this is an interesting topic. Now, firstly, does anybody know what the cycle of abuse is before I get into it? Let me ask Cornelia. Cornelia Shimalizeni. I think she's new. It's the first time that I'm seeing her. Cornelia,
Hi,
how are you, Cornelia?
I am well. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And thank you so much for joining our class tonight.
It's good to be here.
Perfect. So, have you heard about the term called the cycle of abuse?
Mm, yes, I have, but I cannot say I know of it. I can only express my understanding of it.
Yes, sure. Let's hear your understanding. There's no right or wrong answer. We're all just here to help each other.
Yes. So cycle of abuse is, for example, when when habits become a cycle. For example, something happens, you are in an abusive relationship, and there are certain red flags that you note, but because you ignore those red flags or you choose not to see those red flags, it becomes a cycle where now you have to relearn and learn over again that no, this was actually bad for me, or it didn't go the way I wanted it. And we're still stuck in the same loop, if I may say so.
Okay, perfect. Yes. I think you covered it quite well. Thank you so much, Cornelia. So the cycle of abuse, if you're looking at pursuing a career in social work, social auxiliary worker as well, it's very important to consider or to be able to pick up on a cycle of abuse. And a cycle of abuse, to be honest, it is a textbook. A cycle of abuse is a textbook cycle, which means that this kind of circumstances happens in nearly 99% of all abusive relationships. So if you're able to pick up this cycle of abuse or pick up certain elements of this, you'd be able to determine whether there is abuse within a household. And this cycle of abuse, apologies, this cycle of abuse is also what prevents many women from leaving the abusive relationship as well. And we'll get into that now. So this cycle consists of four parts, okay? And the one is tension building. So this usually happens where, all of a sudden now you're noticing, okay, my partner is getting a bit stressed. He's getting a bit angry. He's lashing out at me. His behavior is a bit unpredictable. He's very moody, and so on. That is usually the first part of the cycle, and that is usually where things start getting tense. That's why we call it the tension building. Usually, what then comes straight after that, once the tension has built up, you would then have the incident which would normally be either the incident of the physical violence. So one day, then your partner will snap and he will maybe slap you across the face or do something physical or even pinch you on your shoulders or whatever, or even emotional violence as well. Okay. So usually after the tension builds, then we have the incident. Straight after the incident, then we have the reconciliation, and that is usually the incident where, and we speak about this very commonly, where we say, I've been abused by my partner, but he says it because he loves me. He says he does it because he loves me, or he says that he does it because he wants to see me at my best potential or whatever it could be. Okay. So that usually comes that after the incident. And that's also usually coupled with apologies where your partner will then apologize to you. He actually overwhelms you with apologies and gifts and promises that he will never do that again. He will never touch you again in that way, or he'll never threaten you again. And that is the reconciliation stage. And then after the reconciliation, we have the calm stage. And that is just where it gets peaceful, but this is only temporary. Okay, so usually it would last. It depends on the cycle, on the specific circumstances of the relationship. But sometimes the temporary peace could last a few weeks, sometimes it could last 2 weeks, sometimes even just a few days. Um, and then what would happen then is after the calm, we go straight back into tension building, builds up again until the incident, the reconciliation, and then it gets calm again. And honestly speaking, this cycle of abuse happens over and over and over and over and over again, which is why it's called a cycle. It doesn't end. And it will happen for years that people stay in these relationships, or even decades. And this is the same cycle, the textbook cycle that happens over and over. So, what are the indicators of abuse? And this is also very important to know. So, when you're assessing a person, to pick up as to whether there are any indicators that they are in an abusive relationship, or if they have been exposed to abuse. So, in adults, we would look at fearfulness, you would look at withdrawal or sudden behavior changes. Okay. If they all of a sudden they've become antisocial, they no longer want to see family, they only want to spend time with their partners. Um, if they are scared that maybe they're going to be a few minutes late from work, um, or they didn't make lunch at a specific time, for example, that would all be indicators of abuse. Physical injuries is the very big one. I mean, if you see a woman with a blue eye, or marks around her neck, on her legs, on her arms, and she always then comes up with excuses, that is an indicator of abuse. Because, and it's important to note that many women in these situations will defend the partner that abuses them, and that is a more of a psychological reasoning that goes into it. So you'll see that usually where their behavior changes, or where they feel as, or where they have these injuries, you would notice that they always have excuses and they'll always try and defend their partner. Isolation from friends and family is also a big one, because remember now, the abuser wants you to be isolated. They want you to be on your own because that makes you even more vulnerable, and that gives them more of a position of control and power over you. All right, so when children um, are abused or are exposed to abuse, you would notice that they would do bed wetting, as an example. If they wet the bed, um, or also if they are feeling regression as well. Regression could be in terms of their milestones. If they're no longer reaching their milestones how they should be reaching them, and they're actually regressing in terms of their behavior, they're moving backwards. Children, you would look all out also for anxiety or aggression, and also hypervigilance. Hypervigilance also very important aspects. Persons with disabilities, if they have injuries that are unexplained, if they do not know how the injuries have occurred, and that we can see a lot within the, like, your special needs homes, your disability homes, with the caregivers. So you always look out for if a person has an unexplained injury, if they're scared, if they're showing fear of a caregiver, and if there are also signs of neglect, particularly in incidents where perhaps this an individual is bedridden. You would look out for incidents such as whether there are bed sores, um, if they are bound by nappies. Unfortunately, you would look out as to see whether nappies have been changed, whether they're getting food, um, and any signs of neglect is an indicator of abuse. Does anybody have any other examples of abuse that they can share with us? Shakir?
I have one question,
Yes.
and anyone is allowed to answer. Where the person knows that this person, let's say the wife knows that the husband is short-tempered, right? It doesn't give him the right to abuse her in any way or whatever. But he'll get cross, or he'll break her dishes, or he'll get angry. But she pokes him and she provokes. Can that be called abuse as well?
Absolutely. If I could just give my opinion, then maybe someone else can jump in, but absolutely that is abuse. So usually what would happen is if a
I'm
person,
talking of now
yeah,
from the person provoking. So
yeah,
she knows that the husband is short tempered, but she'll poke and she'll prod and she'll make sure that he gets absolutely angry.
yeah.
Is that also not a form of abuse?
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. Before I get into my comment, let me first hear what others have to say. Does anybody have a response to Shakir there?